And let me introduce Mike for you. So Mike is an award-winning professional photographer living in Orlando, Florida. He's been telling stories photographically for more than 30 years. He's a graduate of New York Institute of Photography with a certificate in professional photography. He's also a member of Professional Photographers of America. He's a stringer working for local newspapers with local news and sports. And he also provides commercial, portrait, and event photography services. And he does have a website. I can post it on in the chat for anybody interested in checking out his portfolio. But tonight he is going to be discussing his Manikin Project, which is a project on grief that uses photos of wooden artist mannequins to express feelings at different times of the grieving process. So did I forget anything, Mike?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I have to say I'm jealous. I think y'all live in one of the most beautiful parts of the country. I went to school just a little bit north of you in Lexington, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley to Washington and Lee. So used to drive through Charlotte several times a year on my way back and forth to school when I lived near Atlanta. So even though it's cold right now, there's still a little bit of jealousy. So I'm going to share with you what I call my Manikin Project, and I want to give you just a little bit of background on what started this project. My wife is a member of the U.S. Army Reserves, and she deployed in 2019 to Kuwait. It was her third deployment and second since we've been married. And when she came back home, we were both very excited to see each other. We hadn't been together. We'd seen each other on video. We hadn't been together for almost 10 months to the day. And we were sharing video messages, and she had reminded me that she's not allowed to show affection on her military bases. And so as soon as we got off the base, we were going to pull over and hug and kiss and get to know each other again. So that was the day before I picked her up. The day I picked her up, she didn't want anything to do with me. A week later, she told me that she had no feelings for me. And we separated, and last February, almost a year ago, she told me she wanted a divorce. We've been through that process, and it will be finalized in March, coming up in March. It's very, very painful for me. I know that she's suffering from some pretty bad mental illness. But she's not willing to get help for it. And so, I know she's hurting, I'm hurting. And I turned to photography to help me. This was also born out of my therapy. My therapist is very much a fan of photography. And when she found out I'm a photographer, she talked about how to use my photography to really help me. And so I've kind of labeled this a phototherapy project. Again, just to help me get through. And what I'm going to talk about is photography as therapy. This is all conceptual photography. So as opposed to portrait photography or news photography or wedding and event photography, I create a concept and I know what I want, and then I use the tools around me to create a photo that tells a story. And my background is in journalism, and so I'm very much interested in storytelling as an art and as a science. So these are not in order, but I did want to kind of group them in the way that I approach the different photography, different images. And what I found is I would know what I was feeling sometimes, but I couldn't always convert that into an image. And so I turned to the internet, and I turned to poetry and songs and other sources to decide what I wanted to image. And this one is titled Heartbreak, and I Googled heartbreak, and I came across the Irish poet David Wacht, and one of his quotes, and it's from a book that I actually bought after I found this, says, "Heartbreak begins the moment we are asked to let go but cannot." And that really resonated with me. And so I put together this photo. The heart is a purple stone heart, and it was a gift from my wife before her first deployment, just something for me to hold on to. And so I wanted to incorporate her into that image. Another one using the same heart, and I created some fake blood on that to create the imagery of a broken heart, and then the image of the Band-Aid trying to repair a broken heart. And I was crying a lot when I took this photo, and the book on his lap is actually a tiny little photo book that was a gift from my wife, and it was full of memories from our last couple of years of marriage. And again, it was a gift before her deployment so that I would look at it and feel closer to her. But instead of those memories making me happy, they were really making me sad and tying into my depression. And this is an image that I felt a bit chaotic. Things were out of my control. And so I found an image of, or I thought that an image of lights on the water. It's looking for light. Light has always been a goal of mine through the dark hours. And yet, everything was so chaotic. And so I created this image. The candles are actually on a sheet of glass, and because the background is all dark, you can't really see the glass, but you can see the reflections, and so it gives the appearance of being very still water. And this is one I really enjoyed making. The blue color was intentional because of the association of blue and the blues with sadness. And it was kind of a dual meaning. One, it was a well to catch the teardrops, but on the other hand, it's like a wishing well. And so the water in the well, both blue teardrops, but also a well into which I'm casting my wishes and my hopes. Another prop that I found very useful is some destroyed cinder blocks from around the house. This one represents pressure, and I had a conversation with my boss at work when this was first going on, and she was saying, "Well, a relationship's like a book. You've read it, you enjoy it, now it's over." And I really felt that was insensitive. And I said, "No, it's more like a house. It's something I've spent 10 years building, and now it's collapsed. And I'm feeling the weight of that collapse." And you can see in the background some smoke that's actually mist from an ultrasonic water mister with some orange light back there to make it look like fire and smoke. I use the cinder blocks in a couple of ways. This is one that I called Burnout, and he's holding a little torch in his hand, and you can see the smoke above his head and just a hint of an ember on the top of the torch, but sitting on a cliff and holding that torch, trying to light up what's dark in front of him, but the torch has burned out, and I was feeling very burnt out with my feelings and emotions at the time. And again, the cinder blocks, again, this time a cliff, but looking at it from a different perspective. And the mannequin just holding on to the edge of the cliff and not sure what's below. It's all dark below. We really can't see where that cliff might end or how high it is. But it was a time when I was really struggling to hold on to my emotions and to hold on to myself, really, in a lot of ways. And this one, again, represents pressure, kind of inspired by Star Wars in a way, when the Luke and Han are in the trash compactor and the walls started to close in on them. And I really felt the walls closing in on me in a number of ways. And so I tried to depict that with the mannequin struggling to keep those walls apart as they do close in on it. And this one is a light in the darkness. If you look closely, you can see kind of a window pattern in the background. And this was inspired by Creedence Clearwater Revival song, Put a Candle in the Window. And that's an old Irish as well as Christian tradition to put a light in the window to light the way home for a loved one. And so this was me representing putting the light in the window, trying to provide my wife a light that would guide her back home. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with bougainvillea, but it's this horrible, beautiful bush that grows, at least in Florida. I call it horrible because it's got 1 to 2 inch thorns on it, making it very difficult to cut back. But I cut some up, and he's carrying these logs, and the sharp thorns are there, and it's a difficult load to carry. It's a painful load to carry. And there's just the wondering if there's going to be one more painful branch that needs to be picked up. And this one obviously represents surrender. I was at a point where I really felt like I couldn't fight anymore, where I couldn't really continue to hold out hope. I was feeling very devastated at the time, and really wanted to show that feeling, with the white flag of surrender. The white flag also means truce or parley. It's a desire to a temporary peace in order to talk. So, kind of a double meaning on that one. This one, you can see the mannequin really, rather than being large and looking more like a person with the smaller props. This is one that I started to journal, and I wanted to kind of commemorate that with the pen and the ink and the journal book. But the mannequin there holding the pen in a way ready to write, even though it's kind of a large pen for it. But again, this is a unique one because I used life-size props rather than proportional props for the mannequin. And then this one, obviously you can see the night sky in the background. That's actually just a piece of cloth that I bought at Joann Fabrics that I really liked the night pattern, and a couple of pieces of foam core gator board there that I put into a corner. And then you can see the window pattern there. And this one was feeling empty and lonely, like he's sitting in an empty room, and you can see the moonlight coming in through the window there. And there are times, I know it's very depressing and a lot of dark imagery, but there are times when I did feel a bit more hopeful. And this was inspired by another David White poem about a pilgrimage, and he talks about the path both seen and unseen. And I liked that imagery, and so I shot this one with a light from behind guiding the path, but at the same time he's moving into darkness, a path he really can't see, but he's holding his hand above his eyes in order to look into the darkness, and he's holding that walking stick in order to just demonstrate the idea of a long journey. And then I move into more focusing just on postures and looking more closely at the mannequin without the props. And this one is drowning. Again, the sheet of glass there. This one was tough to set up, hiding the bottom part of the mannequin, but again, showing him in a flailing or drowning posture there, with the reflection representing that he's in water and really drowning and flailing there out of helplessness. This was more desire than a real feeling. A couple of people have looked at it and interpreted it as a somewhat violent picture, but it really was not intended to be that way. That the mannequin on the ground is in pain. You can see it clutching its stomach, but the one above is to me, it's in a compassionate mode, and it's the mannequin above is reaching out its hand in order to comfort the mannequin who's in pain. And this one, you can tell from the posture, just it's questioning, what's going on. And, for a while, my wife and I had kind of regular conversations, regular communication. And then she just kind of disappeared. I didn't hear from her, and I didn't know what was going on with her or what was happening with her. And so I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? I don't know. And this one, again, using kind of a minimalist technique to make the mannequin appear very small against the background. And it's waving his hands over its head in order to attract attention. It's feeling very small, but yet very much wanting to be seen and wanting that attention. And this one, like the image a couple ago, I was really in a lot of pain, not necessarily physical pain, but emotional pain. But the two oftentimes do go hand in hand. And so I wanted to show the pain that I was feeling in a way that, it's hard to show really emotional pain. So I was showing physical pain. This one is, again, sadness. You can see the night sky, the dark sky representing the night sky, the stars, the clouds. The mannequin's just kind of sitting on the end of the bed. He's got nothing in his hands. He's just kind of hands folded on his lap. And he's just sitting there, in a sad, almost meditative pose. And, this is how I got out of bed a lot of mornings, is I would just sit up in bed and just really sit there and think about the day and think about things were going on and really struggle at trying to get out of bed. This one, I was trying to, in a way, recreate Munch's painting the screen, but I couldn't get the mannequin to cooperate. There's some limitations in what I could do with its hands and its arms, but the posture is very similar, and the hands on top of its head just kind of in a frustrated stance. But trying to, again, being inspired by another image by another artist who was depicting a lot that I was feeling. This one is kind of the opposite of the hiking one. Rather than hiking into being in a hopeful way, looking toward the future, this one is just kind of trudging along, slow, kind of intentional walk, very emotionless, but very sad, with the hunched shoulders and the downturned face. This is one very similar to the one we saw a few minutes ago with the mannequin feeling small. This one is looking down at the mannequin and feeling very low. And again, small, looking up, but at the same time feeling low, and trying to show that through the posture. This is one that was inspired by a Bob Dylan song. It's a song that I really like. It's got some very sad overtones, but tangled up in the blues, tangled up in the blue feelings and the blue emotions. And so I used some gift ribbon that I had around the house, some Christmas ribbon, and just tied the mannequin up in that. This one I call At the Corner of Lonely and Angry, and using little tiles from a game that I have, spelling out the two words, and they intersect in the Y. And someone looked at this and looked at the Y, and rather than interpreting it as the letter, interpreted as the question, WHY. Why am I lonely? Why am I angry? So it was interesting at times to hear other people's perspectives on my photos and what I was trying to communicate and what others were seeing in them. This one, again, it's a physical representation of an emotional state. I was feeling very cold, emotionally cold, and so I wanted to depict the mannequin shivering, holding itself, trying to keep warm, wearing a scarf, and that kind of cold, foggy mist all around it. And I don't know why I have my drowning one twice, but there's the drowning one again. And this one was a bit of a challenge to do to get the raindrops to show up, but it's an image that I see recreated a lot in person, where a photographer shoots a portrait through water droplets on a pane of glass. And so this is another one using my pane of glass, but using some glycerin to make the water bead up, and a spray bottle. So it's the mannequin looking through the glass that with the raindrops on it, and it represents the storminess of the situation. Another one with a physical posture. You can see the rope. Obviously, the mannequin is hanging on to the rope, and again, representing just kind of like the surrender, just being able to, some days, just barely able to hold on. This is another one with a pain, but kind of a different posture. It represents a lot more tiredness. The mannequin has had to sit down and really kind of, the other two pain ones were, there was a bit more action to them. You could see it. It was almost as if the mannequin was writhing, and this one sitting and holding its stomach and just kind of in a much more quiet, subdued posture. And this is one of the last images that I took. This one was actually inspired by, still is my father-in-law. And I have a very good relationship with my wife's parents, and we talk on a regular basis. But it was the image of the warrior, and my in-laws had asked me not to give up on their daughter. And this one was less of an image of what I was feeling at the time, and more casting a vision that this is what I want to be, this is what I need to be, that I need to find ways to continue to fight and to continue to be strong and really be that warrior. So I've shared, these are a lot of the photos, not all of them. There's some redundancy in there, and there's others that that I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. But you can look at my, I've posted all of my photos along with the poems or the songs or the inspirations for the photos on my Instagram account. I didn't do it so much on Facebook, but I did share the entire project on Instagram. And again, with the photos and the inspiration, the poetry and things like that. So that is the end of my slideshow.
Well, I thought that was pretty interesting. It was very creative, and some of those photos were just outstanding. I mean, how you got the mannequins to pose, but as well with your backdrops, and like when you use glycerin for the rain, and so you almost told us like a magician's trick, when you told us that.
It's nothing you couldn't find on Google, but anytime that you see fruit with water droplets on it, that's water with a third glycerin in it. It's old commercial photographers' trick.
So has this project helped you with your recovery, with your dealing with your divorce?
It has. I think the most value that I've found in it is it served as a way for me to communicate with my therapist, that I would save the image that I took that week and take it into my therapy and show her the image, and then we would really talk about how I was feeling and what had caused that feeling and ways to deal with the feeling. So part of it was being able to externalize. I didn't hold the feelings in as much, but part of it was to communicate with my therapist and with some of my friends exactly how I was feeling at that time. And so it became a good communicative tool.
I know that it's difficult when you have a partner that does have some mental issues or difficulties that you you feel helpless because you want to help them. I understand your feelings as far as the whole situation. That in a way you feel helpless, you wish you could do more, that it didn't have to end that way, but you know, you can only control your own emotions and not necessarily the other person's emotions. So,
Is your wife's parents, have they looked at some of these and have they found this to be comforting or somehow able to make some sense of the situation?
Repeat the first part of that. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you quite clearly.
Did your wife's parents, did they get a chance to look at some of these, and did this kind of help them to kind of deal with the situation at all?
I'm not sure if it helped them. They aren't really good about sharing their feelings, but I did share the project with them, and they did follow it on Instagram. And in fact, my father-in-law encouraged me to put them into a book and to write down my inspirations into a book. And so I created a document that was just kind of an ongoing diary journal of it. And every couple of weeks I would update it and I would share it with him. And I know he always enjoyed that and would sometimes pick out a photo and talk to me about it.
I
I was
was,
wondering if you
Can't hear you.
can't hear you, Nancy.
this, it would be very helpful to a lot of people in different situations. The people who would do it, or so many things. that would
Nancy, we
help
can't
them.
hear you. I think you're not.
I think this in a book form would be very beneficial, especially during the pandemic. So many people are suffering from mental anxiety, depression, etc. And I think people who are fear of death that is affecting them would benefit from your project. I just think it's amazing. You've done a
Thank
very
you.
good job on it. And where did you come up with the idea to use the little mannequin?
It actually went back to my wife's first deployment. I did a similar project, but it was much more varied. Rather than doing just the mannequin, I would identify a feeling and then just go out really into the world to find an image. And one of them, the military has something called battle buddies, and your battle buddy is someone who always has your back. And I don't know if y'all have seen Forrest Gump, but there's a scene in Forrest Gump when he's in Vietnam with Bubba Blue, and they're sleeping in the jungle, and they're sleeping back to back, and they watch each other's back. And my wife was telling me about her battle buddy. She had a friend over in Afghanistan who was watching her back. And I struggled to have that person in my life, someone who would always, who would have my back that I could turn to. And so I used the mannequin with a white backdrop and some light, but I shot it in a way that its back was turned toward, like the one with the little mannequin in the corner. I had it set up to where most of the image was behind the back, and you could see that the mannequin had nothing behind it, no one behind it. And that really became my favorite image of that. And so I started off, using the mannequin because I'd found it to be an expressive tool because of that one image. And so it just kind of caught on, and I just, I enjoyed the challenge of posing and accessorizing the mannequin through this project.
I was going to suggest like a gallery show, but actually the book idea is a really good idea. So I don't know if you've thought about that, to put a book together and publish it.
I have thought about it. I've got the document. I need to go back through it because I want to make sure that I don't have any copyrighted story, because I did pull some poems from the internet, and being a photographer, I'm very aware of copyright laws. So I need to go back and take out where I've quoted basically a whole poem and condense that into just a line or two that I felt was important. I have self-published a book before, and so, you know, I have gone into my account and just seen what I can do. So it's kind of encouraging. I will have to maybe pick that up now that, you know, I've kind of put the project aside, and go ahead and relook at the publication.
Well, I think like what Nancy said with, you know, a lot of people having anxiety, depression, and grief, a variety of emotions from the last 2 years, that this would be very beneficial for them. So,
And I'm really looking for opportunities like this to present to people. I've written an article about it and have submitted it to a couple of magazines because I really do want it to be a teaching moment and to help people see how they can use their creativity or an art form that they particularly like that can help them start to process and deal with their emotions. So I do like the book to share my work, but I also want to find ways in which I can enable other people to do something similar to what I've done.
well, you know, you're more than welcome to submit your article to us for our newsletter. We have like 432 members in our group. So, I mean, if you're interested in doing something like that, we'd be glad to publish it in the newsletter. And even a picture or two, you know, some pictures.
Okay, I will do that. That would be great. Thank you.
You know, we're always looking for, I get tired of having to write an article every month, so we like outside influence. I could probably stop this recording.